So, The Joy of Creation. It's a FNAF fan game that is associated with the Fazbear Fanverse initiative, making it an official FNAF project. It was originally developed by Nixon, who was also known for those nights at Rachel's. The Joy of Creation has had many versions of itself over the years, those being the original, Reborn, Halloween Edition, and most famously, Story Mode. The Joy of Creation Story Mode was really popular when it was released in 2017, and it is usually considered one of the best FNAF fan games ever by many people, even myself. Again, it was successful to get into Scott Cawthon's Fanverse, which would have it so there would be an official remake of the game. A demo of the office level in this remake in particular being currently available to play. The huge success of this cool fan game is no secret. This fan game was everywhere, and it still is everywhere. So many let's plays and fan-made content being made of the game. It's inescapable, and I'm happy to say that most of its reception is positive. However, some successful projects aren't immune to negative responses and criticism. The Joy of Creation is no exception when it comes to this, as there's actually a very common complaint with this game that is often shared by multiple people, both fans of the game and its detractors. It's not an opinion you see very often, but it's something you can find if you look more into the game's reception on the internet like Twitter, Reddit, etc. The complaint being that the Joy of Creation is outright disrespectful. In this short little essay video, we will see if this critique towards this popular fan game has any weight to it, and if it's actually a valid complaint to have towards it. Without further ado, let's get right into this heap. Is the Joy of Creation disrespectful? So the story of the Joy of Creation follows Scott Cawthon, the creator of FNAF himself, and even his family. Well, different people for his family instead of his actual one in real life, but you get the picture. That detail about the game's story alone should already give you a sense of what the criticism is, but if you really want me to go further, there is this doppelganger demon from hell named Michael who wants to take over Scott Cawthon's body, which he's successful in by the very end of the game. As a result, Scott Cawthon dies. The ignited animatronics as well as the fallen endos are brought into the picture too. If you haven't guessed it yet, what people took issue with in regards to this game is the fact that Scott Cawthon himself dies at the end of the game in a rather pretty terrifying way. As well, there's also the fact that Scott's family was put into this horror game with scary looking animatronics who are actively trying to kill them in their own home. On the surface, yes. An argument could be made about this being outright weird to include in your FNAF fan game's story. Of course, making the story of your fictional project involve the death of a real person and involving their family and the tragedy related to the death of the real person. That's gonna turn some heads, and it certainly did. However, I want to make a case with that. So the one question everyone probably has on their minds, or at least did when the game came out, was, what was the real Scott Cawthon's reaction to this ending? Did he take offense or otherwise? Well, Scott did see it and had quite the unexpected reaction. This is where I refer to Nixon and Fisnum's Q&A of the 1-year anniversary of the game.
Well, I don't really need to think of how he reacted because he actually did react to it. And, I quote, "I didn't know that this was going to be the plot, but I'm okay with it. I'm even honored by it and kind of like the fact that I died in it."
Fuck.
So in a surprise twist of events, Scott liked the ending. Shocked he was, but he also felt honored. In all fairness though, it isn't actually all that surprising if you realize what Scott likes putting in some of his games from time to time. The biggest examples being moments like in FNAF World Twice, or in Chicken Space, where you can literally kill Scott Cawthon in a boss battle like deal. Clearly this man doesn't mind the fact of him dying in video games. Now granted, those were games created by him himself. The Joy of Creation was created by someone else. However, Scott still enjoyed it overall. This is where I think that argument suddenly becomes pretty strange, at least if you're arguing it to this day. Before Scott responded, I think this argument was pretty valid to make. However, it is ultimately up to the real person the story centers around to tell if it's truly terrible. And since Scott responded to it and liked it, it kind of isn't really that much valid anymore? No need to put words in someone's mouth. I also think it's helped by the fact that a fictional family was used instead of Scott's real family. I think Scott might have drawn the line there if it was his real family, but no, it was just Scott Cawthon himself, and the real man gave the seal of approval. Clearly, as again, the Joy of Creation would go on to be one of the Fanverse games, and the Joy of Creation would be referenced in Security Breach, an official FNAF game. It's unfortunate this sentiment is still being spread around today within the FNAF community when the person it's literally about doesn't even have that much of an issue with it, actually having a very positive opinion on it. Say whatever you want about Scott Cawthon, but I don't really agree with putting words in someone's mouth again. Now, I'm not saying the Joy of Creation is free from criticism, even with its story. You could argue there were some poor writing choices and some stuff conceptually that could be seen as goofy. Hell, as said by Nixon in that anniversary Q&A I used as reference earlier, the story was changed throughout development, so maybe that had a hand in some of the story decisions with the game.
Before I came in, the story was a little bit, questionable. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Very much
so. Yeah, well, it's gonna be... Anyway, basically, Michael was a regular dude, a family friend of Scott, who, had a crush on his wife. And then he was like, I'm gonna release animatronics that are gonna kill you, and I'm gonna program them to kill, and, you know, and then he sets the house on fire, bad, you know.
Yeah.
Either way though, I personally wouldn't say the Joy creation is disrespectful. It's purely a piece of criticism that was spawned from a theoretical initial reaction upon the game's release in 2017, and shouldn't really be around anymore despite the Joy creation still not being perfect. If you're gonna criticize the game's story, go for literally anything but the real person this game's about. Meanwhile, I am going to still consider Story Mode to be one of my favorite fan games ever, and await the upcoming release of the remade version from the Fanverse. The demo was awesome, and the full game is looking to be even more awesome.